Whoa. Hello. How's everybody doing? How's everybody enjoying Miami? How about Mo Levin? Give him a hand. I hate the guy. I do the North American Bitcoin Conference. We're mortal enemies. And I want to say that how much I appreciate actually Mo as a friend, and what a great conference he puts on, guys. Really. I'm here to talk about this little project of mine called Factum, but I would like to give you guys a history. Before I go there, I'm going to save some time for questions. We do not have mics, so I would like you guys, if you during the presentation, if you have a question, tweet it to hashtag TNABC, the hashtag for the conference. And I will select some of those questions and talk about them at the end. I want to give you a background about where Factum came from. About roughly 20 years ago, I was involved in a series of software development projects. I do compilers, I wrote operating systems, was involved in writing graphics routines in assembly language for the digital printing revolution of the late 80s. And that carried on into work at Microsoft and at IBM. And I saw the amazing difficulty in configuring systems and deploying them securely and efficiently. And I thought, dang, what's kind of like programming, what's kind of like configuring systems in the real world? And I came to the conclusion that biological systems are like that. You have a CD's worth of DNA. Did you know that? A CD, single CD. With that, 200 different cell types have been created. 100 trillion systems have been deployed and configured. And this guy is sitting here at the table today from a single CD that didn't require anybody to touch it. That is the kind of configuration and deployment that we should be able to do in our computer systems. So I got to thinking, well, where's the operating system? Wait, there is no operating system. The operating system in a cell is a configuration engine, not an operating system. It's how you deploy code, how you deploy functionality, how you manage it, how you repair it, how you detect damage, how you recover. And if you go look up my name in the patent database, you'll see a couple patents on that sort of thing that I did for IBM. So I looked at this problem and I thought, I want to build this system. And I thought about it and thought about it and thought about it. And, you know, the problem is registry. I have to register and I have to manage libraries. How do I do all this stuff? Finally, I just kind of set it aside. So a year ago, I was at this little conference in Miami done by this, you know, Mo Levin guy. And I'm sitting at a table and I'm having a conversation with David Johnston. And David Johnston's saying, we've got to figure out a way to incentivize the production and management and deployment of open source software. And I said, David, it can't be done. I worked on it 20 years ago. There is no way to do it because in the end, there's no way to create a distributed autonomous registry. And I said, wait a second. There is now. What am I thinking? We have Bitcoin. So, delay. We're now pay-based. How did that happen? Oh. Ignore that second push. Well, up there is a great big blackboard with a bunch of complexity and a guy standing in front of it. So I got to looking at this and I said, this is a really cool problem. We now have the tools to build a distributed autonomous operating system where you could deploy code that ran in a switch, or you could deploy code that ran a protein folding program across many, many applications. You could create your own social network. We have the way to design what we wanted to build and deploy it now. And I got to looking at it and I said, well, how do cells do that? Well, and this is from past research. They do it via triggers. What are triggers? Triggers are attributes. You have to know what processor you're running on. You have to know how much memory it has, how much storage it has. Well, there are slides up there. You just don't see them. You have to know all of these aspects. And if you don't have who the user is and what they're doing and what they're trying to do, you have no way to configure your operating system, which isn't an operating system, it's just a set of functionality that solves a particular problem. You don't have the way to configure that. You don't have a way to deploy it. So before I can do this problem, I need to solve the problem of distributed identification. What is ID? Identification is a thing that has attributes. I am a thing. I have a name. I have so much hair. I weigh what I do, unfortunately. I would like to weigh less. I'm a certain height. Many attributes that I just have. But I also have some attributes that really are beyond my control. The government gives me a citizenship. It gives me a license. I have organizations that give me membership, that give me access to certain amenities. So I have other sources external that give me attributes, and I have attributes. And then there's attributes around those, like what I'm doing at the moment. These attributes are dynamic. If I would like to join a circus, I might like to learn sword swallowing. Not an attribute I currently possess, but it is an attribute, believe it or not, that you can learn. And if you want, I know a guy that will teach you to swallow swords or drive nails up your nose. These are attributes that I could acquire. So attributes are very dynamic. So yes, I can do that on the blockchain. Figured out a way that I could do the transactions and connect it all together, and I could build this thing, and it could be, but it was really, really fragile. And it was really prone to a lot of particular problems. And so what I decided, click, was to produce a general purpose ledger. Instead of looking at the blockchain as a form that has certain fields that you can fill in to produce a certain type of transaction that can be validated against the next one, because that's really what Bitcoin is. I wanted to produce blank paper. So Factum provides you the ability to get yourself a book of blank paper, write on that blank paper, and turn the page. Now here's the kicker. Once you turn the page, once you've submitted that data to Factum, cannot be changed, cannot be erased, cannot be modified, cannot be deleted. You can write on the next sheet, oops, ignore the previous page, turn the page. In other words, you have every mitigation strategy you have in a normal database. The only thing Factum doesn't support is denial. Now, it turns out that this is incredibly useful because I can exactly use this for identification, because now I can not only track IDs, but I can track what your ID was and make sure that something in the past happened correctly, and I can update the identity of various things, and then I'll be able to manage your access and the way you're handled in a dynamic fashion. Both make sure that you were handled correctly in the past, as well as making sure you have the proper handling in the present. This is useful for handling titles. Thank you. It's useful for handling titles. It's useful. Oh, great. I have a screen. Yay, thank you. This is a great slide. Stay there. Factum doesn't do anything. It's blank paper. When you walk up to a pad of paper, how does the paper restrict you in what pictures you draw? It doesn't. But it does record. That's all it does. It turns out that's a pretty hard problem. Now let's see if I can get on track. There's the data layer. Okay, Factum is created by placing anchors into the Bitcoin blockchain. So it inherits the value, the security of the Bitcoin blockchain, does not require any modifications to the Bitcoin blockchain. You powers that be, just click it every 10 seconds and I'll keep up with you. There you go. You can build all those title records, legal apps, financial apps, and all those medical records on top of Factum because there are no restrictions, no gateways. Just go on to the next one. Yes. So why does Factum have a token? Factum does have a token. You have to have a token to prevent, the next slide, spam. If you don't have to pay for anything, you get email, where you get spammed. But unlike email, it never goes away. So if we don't require some payment, then there isn't any way to stop spam from clogging the system and reducing the usefulness. But we also want to be decentralized. If you paid someone, then you have a centralized entity. So we need the payment to go into the protocol. The only way you can put the payment into the protocol is if you have control of writing the protocol. And so we don't want to try to hobble this on top of Bitcoin. We don't want to sew onto Bitcoin an extra arm, an extra bit of functionality, because that's essentially what you, the user, who's building an application to track the validity of art in the marketplace, that's what you would have to do. You would have to sew on functionality that Bitcoin doesn't have. Also, because we're writing the protocol, we can isolate the users from the cryptocurrency itself. And so, in this case, we have factoids that you can trade that represent your ability to sell access to the protocol, and you do that by converting factoids to an entry credit that you assign to a public key. Your customers, like a bank or financial institution, can purchase entry credits from you, and you convert your factoids into entry credits and assign it to his public key. Then his application gets to use Factum, the Factum protocol. Now, this is incredibly important. Banks and financial institutions do not want to touch a cryptocurrency. They might if they really have a strong, compelling case, but if they don't want to touch it. They don't want to pick up the risk. They don't want to have to deal with money service business issues. They don't want to have to deal with money transfer business issues, and they don't want to have to deal with bit license. And any other industry that's using Factum is not going to want to have to worry about the restrictions, what might happen to them just because they're using Factum. It's also designed, the economics of the Factum system is designed to tie the value of Factum to the utility of the protocol. And by tying the value of the system of Factum to the utility of the protocol aligns all the incentives of everyone that's working in Factum. They all follow the utility. So, this brings me to some announcements. First of all, we are releasing today a consensus paper for public review. We want you to help us and look at how we're implementing this, look at our consensus algorithm, and help us ensure that it is the best it can possibly be. We are also releasing an alpha version of our API. You will be able to look at our API, and today you can look at our API, and you can see how can I use this to build a solution to my problem. And to provide an example, we took nearly 30,000 volumes from the Gutenberg library. We hashed each one of them, attached a bunch of metadata so that you could usefully search the data and find your cryptographic hash for that particular work. We collected all of them, threw them in Factum, and 3 entries into the blockchain were made. And you can look at the data and get a Merkle proof to any one of these nearly 30,000 entries and prove their state at the time we created the entries, prove their state against 3 entries in the blockchain. Reducing bloat, did it all in about 20 minutes. Reducing bloat. And providing an easy interface to do a useful and rather impressive project. I believe this is the largest amount of data secured against a blockchain in history. Also, we will be having a crowd sale in 2015. That's how we support our development and our efforts. And you ask, what development? What efforts? Well, we're keeping an open process. All of our development is done on GitHub. If you are the kind of person who really likes to watch sausage being ground, you can get on GitHub and you can watch it in real time. We're open to the community. We respond to questions and queries, and we have over 30 people involved in the project worldwide, and we're, of course, open to more. So at this point, it's questions. So I get to look at my phone and see some Twitter messages, maybe. Let's see if there are any messages, any questions. Boop, boop. Boop, doop. Okay. So, search, pound, Bitcoin. Now we see how old guys do cell phones. D. Somebody asked me a question in Spanish. No comprehende. Most exciting, geographic governance to blockchain governance. That's cool. I don't know what to say about that. This is working really, really well. 15 new interactions. I know that, well, let me ask, dang it. This was supposed to work just really easy because it was supposed to come out. Did anybody ask any questions? It's at TNABC. Yes. Hashtag TN. Here's a bunch of questions. Let's see. Maybe. Here's a bunch of questions. Banks and financial systems. There's a lot of people quoting me. I appreciate that, guys. Okay, let's do it old style. What's that? Practical applications. We are talking to a South American country to fix their titling system. They installed a brand new, shiny, major database, major consulting company, land and title system for the country, and immediately everyone began to, in the field, began to do extortion and changing titles and everything else, because instead of there being a paper record, there was now just a little database record you could change. Factum is looked to be at a solution, and we're actually working with them. We're talking to a group in Nigeria about dealing with some little thing called identity theft. Who knew? We're talking to a major bank in Asia. We don't really know what they want to do, but they're excited about using Factum. They have something in mind. We're talking to a major bank in the United States to do some pilot programs. And on top of that, we've talked to ArtCoa about creating a registry for digital art and real art, tracking the validity and validation of the certifications behind art and the provenance, the history of the art, what galleries it went to, and who owned it, and that sort of thing. So there are many, many, many applications. They're looking at wills, documenting the will, documenting the contents of the will all the way on. Basically, Factum vastly increases the security of some systems by removing the need to isolate the database because you're afraid somebody will modify it, and limiting your security to maintaining privacy. Cryptography is very powerful to manage privacy, and Factum is very, very powerful for maintaining validity. So it just removes a lot of security issues. Anybody else call out a question?
Two parts. First question is, where is all this stuff stored? The second question is, if you can never delete anything, what happens to what could potentially be a huge amount of data?
Okay, where is it stored? It's stored via a distributed hash table across many nodes in the Factum node network. And the way it's architected is at the very low level, you have a directory block that maintains the links to the entries of particular chains. You remember I told you you had your own book? That's like a chain in the Factum world. And so you can run along the directory block, which acts like a microchain. It's a very small amount of data in order to find the entries that you're interested in. And then from those entries, acquire the data via the distributed hash table, kind of like BitTorrent. And so if Mastercoin's running over here on top of something, and there's a big mortgage company that's running on this chain, and there's payment systems over here doing this and that, and what you have is a will, you just run along the directory blocks, ignoring all those entries, find yours, and collect your data. And because the proofs run from your data to the Bitcoin blockchain, you don't have to have their data to validate yours. And that's one of the problems you have in Bitcoin, is no matter how you design a system that runs within Bitcoin, you have to have all of Bitcoin to validate data in Bitcoin. Yeah, just yell it.
Can you talk a little bit more about the project Gutenberg and give some more information regarding how you map the break between the digital record and the physical object itself?
Okay, so let me describe what we did with Gutenberg, because it's really very simple. We took the library, we ran through each record. The record gives me the title and some other ancillary information about the publishing date and some other things. And then, of course, it had the book itself. And textbooks, books that are just text, are very small. They're not really all that big. And so we then hash all of that data, the book, and we created a hash for the book. And we took the particular metadata that we want. We created a record. That is the entry that we entered into Factum. The entry is hashed, and it goes into an entry block. And so the entry block ends up with a bunch of hashes. Each one of those relates to a book with its metadata. Then the entry block itself is hashed, Merkle root, into the directory block. And then the directory block gets hashed and placed into the blockchain. So if there were other applications running while I was putting Gutenberg into Factum, then they would essentially have their own trees of proof that build up from the directory block to their entry blocks to the various entries, okay? So that's how it's structured. What we did, we ran a script. It ran through one by one by one by one and built these entries. Then we ran a script that ran through that list of entries and made Factum, created a Factum chain, and then created submitted the entries for each one of those books. And that's all we did. Oh, well, yes, the crowd sale, we're looking at all the best practices from the community. One of the things that we are making a big emphasis on is the crowd sale is tied to us providing actual deliverables to the community with actual review from the community about what we're doing, so that the crowd sale will not occur unless there's every reason to believe that we're making the progress that we fully intend to make. And it's not just our word we're making the progress. You get to look at it and look at the deliverables that we're producing and evaluate them. We're using Coinify as a platform because they're really good guys. And Darian is an incredible swimmer. I saw him swimming in the Dead Sea. And that's another story. I don't know what else to say. I mean, being open and being honest about how we're funding what we're doing and funding our ongoing development, I think that's about the best we can do. And we're picking the best partners we can find. Them and the Omni Protocol. Those two guys, those two groups are working very well with us and have a lot of experience in the space.
In terms of the current state of the API, in the early days, is there any risk to developing on it and dealing with changes down the road?
Yes, it is an alpha API. And so just like the Bitcoin test network, we will reset it. So now any data that you put, and also we're dropping the chains into the Bitcoin test network because we don't want a bug to suddenly dump a bunch of data into Bitcoin. and also it costs money to dump stuff into Bitcoin. So, so during the development, it's about you understanding the protocol and testing how it works. It's not about you building an application that you're going to secure a country's land titles and that sort of, you wouldn't do that on the test network. Anything else? Well, I can't see anything, so you just have to yell it out. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about access privileges to data stored on the blockchain? Like, for example, if someone wants to put an article on the blockchain, if they want it to be public versus like a medical record.
Right. Well, the thing is what you have is public blank paper. What you have to secure privacy is this thing we call cryptography. So what you want to do, if you want to keep it private, is encrypt it or provide hashes to data that you're storing in a secured system, right? And you can now validate that data via normal cryptographic methods, but keeping it private data private. So there's nothing about Factum that makes you publish data that you want to keep private. And because it's blank paper, all the cryptographic tricks that you can perform for any particular purpose, such as selective proofs, where I prove to you this data is valid, but the fact that I gave you a proof doesn't allow you to transmit that proof to a third party, all those tricks are available to you. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit more about your planned integrations with people like Counterparty or Mastercoin or Pinhead Storage?
Well, the fact that Bitcoin has this enormous amount of security in the proof of work makes it just like, are you giving me 5 or 1? Okay, good. The fact that Bitcoin has this enormous amount of security in its proof of work, you can imagine it like Fort Knox on steroids for data, okay? People want to use it, but the problem is the only way to use it for these other functions, for these other features, is to subvert it in one way or another. Encode data into multi-sigs, use a dozen op returns to get your data in or whatever. And so what Factum is doing is providing a way to access that security without going through all that rigmarole. Companies like Storage are incredibly powerful. They're currently running on other blockchains because they can get the functionality they need from those blockchains, but those blockchains aren't that secure. If they come over and build their chains in Factum, then they can secure their processes using Factum, inherit the proof of work from the Bitcoin blockchain, and not pollute it with a bunch of entries that have nothing to do with Bitcoin. Mastercoin has issues with Omni Protocol and Counterparty have issues with transaction speeds, and they have issues with complaints from some parties for doing asset trading on top of the Bitcoin blockchain. Factum provides them a place to get the security of the Bitcoin blockchain for their transactions and not be constrained by the Bitcoin blockchain. Is that good enough, Sean? Well, I lost him. The line must have gone dead. Any other questions? Guys, I really, really appreciated the opportunity to talk to you all. And I think the Factum team is here. So if the Factum team stands up, look at these guys, and they're the ones that you can go and ask a question to. They're the ones doing the development. Thank you very much.